So my last video the other night was about 20 minutes long, but I had a lot to say and a lot was on my mind. So tonight, I was just thinking about one concept today that has really been hitting me lately, and I wanted to share, just kind of put in kind of just a video blog entry for me, but maybe it'll help somebody else. Something I've been thinking about the last couple days is really the concept of forgiveness. And not anybody in particular in mind, but just the past, and thinking through those who have affected your life, those who have wronged you, hurt you, offended you. And I don't mean in like a Facebook post kind of way, I mean like literally offended you, hurt something in your life, hurt your lifestyle, hurt you spiritually, or emotionally, whatever. But so just the idea of that tonight, I have a lot on my mind, as anybody who knows me knows that I always do. But I'm just trying to limit tonight to just thinking through what I've been learning about forgiveness. And forgiveness is a concept that seems so huge and supernatural and pretty much impossible for all of us as human beings. And as I kind of thought through it, I kind of started to do a word study, because an old friend that I have, he's not old, but he's a friend from the past. Not to offend him if he sees this, and he may not. But he always said, define your terms. And as a Bible teacher in the past, and working with another Bible teacher, that was something that we always told and taught our students. And I've kind of made it a principle in my life, not even just for biblical concepts, but for everything. Make sure everybody's speaking the language that you're speaking. So, define your terms. For me, so forgiveness, I did a study on it because it's something that I've been working on releasing. Um, those from my past who have hurt me, and those maybe didn't even know that they did. And so those are the more difficult ones, right? Because as a child, we're taught to, someone says you're sorry, and you're supposed to forgive them like on the spot. And you hug and make up, or kiss and make up, or whatever. And I love Peter in the Gospels. He always was the one who was willing to stick his foot in his mouth, and he asked Jesus how many times he should forgive. And Jesus said, and some interpretations are a little bit different, but he said, to some people, he said 77 times. Some interpretations, some versions say 70 times 7. So somewhere between 77 and 490 times, we are supposed to forgive someone, which, of course, I believe with the implications of the number 7, Jesus was saying forgive all the time. For as many times as they sin against you, forgive them. And then he says, he teaches the disciples, he gives what many call the Lord's Prayer, and what I like to call the model prayer. And he talks about, forgive us our trespasses, we forgive those who trespass against us. As soon as he's done teaching them that prayer, he says, I think in verse 14 and in verse 15, he says, if you don't forgive, that God won't forgive you. So, scary thing. We think about forgiveness and a supernatural kind of thing as something impossible for us to do, because I think errantly we've defined forgiveness as it's the whole gamut. We release what's been done, and then on top of that, included in that, I think, really as far as how I grew up, and being taught as a child, was that reconciliation and restoration and redemption and all those things were in that one word, forgiveness. And I think that's wrong. I think it actually goes too far in a definition of forgiveness. And I'm not trying to get out of forgiving anybody, but I'm trying to help myself understand that forgiveness is possible because of what it is. And I think that you look at the historic definition of forgiveness, and I don't mean somebody's biblical or a fluffy definition of forgiveness. You look at the actual real word and what it was defined as. The English kind of defines it a little different, and it looks at kind of its roots in German and stuff like that, and it kind of talks about this idea of to fully release, or to give up fully, kind of that concept. The Greek kind of implies something different. It says actually to exhale. It's the same idea of letting go of a breath. And that kind of really hit me thinking about it, because that kind of brought home for me what forgiveness is. It's when you are stressed out and you are not letting somebody else go and not letting someone else what they've done to you go. It's like that deep breath. You are the one that's uptight. You are the one that's tense. And I love that idea. To forgive is finally to exhale, is finally to and let it go. And the idea from that, and the idea kind of that you put the concepts together historically, and it really is this idea of letting something go, letting someone else go to the point that you're no longer holding what they did as punishable or as a debt against them. And when you put it in earthly terms like that, man, it not only can you grasp it, but you can do it. Because I think this idea that we forgive somebody and everything's gone, right? We forget. God has not wired us to forget. Our brains are not wired to forget, which would make no sense. Obviously, something that, again, it's a concept that biblically and spiritually we can't do it. We can't do all that God did, and that's kind of the point. But on a human level, forgiving, that idea of letting go, releasing somebody from a debt, makes it a whole lot more sense, because I don't have to, nor am I responsible for reconciling with or restoring a full relationship, because I think that for humans, there's a lot of people that we've done stuff, they've hurt us to different levels. And again, I don't mean in a Facebook way. I don't mean in so-and-so offended me because they posted something about the presidential candidate, or they didn't like somebody's leggings or something like that. I'm talking about like a spiritual offense, hurting you, hurting your feelings, and really kind of doing it knowingly, right? Somebody never knew they hurt you. It's kind of on you. You never told them. So that idea of letting go of a debt, letting go of something, as you seeing it as punishable, releasing that, letting go, breathing out, it's huge for me. You know, and I think about the concepts, other words that I looked up thinking about it was forgiveness. I looked up reconciliation. I looked up redemption and restoration. Hugely different words there. Forgiving is letting go. Forgiving is I no longer am holding the right to punish that person. Does it mean that you're going to have warm fuzzies when you see that person in the mall, or you pass them, or everything's going to be great and that tight smile will someday become real? And it might, but that's restoration. That is working on the relationship, going back to what it was before. Maybe even better. And as we come out of the week, you know, we call Holy Week, we call, you know, the Resurrection Week, of when Jesus sealed our salvation, rose again from the grave, proved all of Scripture, really. We have this idea of we can be not only reconciled to God, so reconciled means that he puts us back in good standing with him, which is amazing in and of itself, but he redeemed that debt, right? So when we forgive, we released somebody to not hold a debt over their head. He went beyond that and he bought the debt. He bought it, paid for it. So he took what we couldn't do, forgave us, and no longer held it as punishable, but then bought our debt, bought us, went beyond that, reconciled us to make us his child, and then went beyond that, and he restores us to full rights as a child. Maybe in your life, with your spouse, with your child, with a parent who has wronged you, you get to that level. Maybe you get to restoration. Maybe you get to reconciliation. Restoration's real deep, but redemption, to buy back, to buy that debt, to buy someone into family rights, is amazing. And so in some ways, I don't want to say I'm giving myself credit, because I'm not, but I'm doing better than I used to, in that no longer holding it over somebody's head that I have the right to punish them. So when I see them, and there were somebody who hurt me, legitimately hurt me, forgive is to release that debt, to exhale, for me to take it off my shoulders, to let it go. Man, they don't have to be present. I never understood how you forgive somebody that's not asking. That's it. Because this is something that I do. I remove it as a debt from their head. I take it away as punishment for them. And Christ could say that because ultimately, look, I mean, he set the standard, right? He died for what we did in order to redeem us, buy us back, and then reconcile us as his child. And even further than that, restore us to a full rights and relationship with him. So give yourself a little credit. If you're working on forgiveness and you are at the point that you can at least hold it as not punishable, to not hold that debt as something that you should collect, something that you have the right to hold over them and to remind them of. So I don't know that we can forget, but we can choose not to remember the debt. The lesson that we learn through the hurt is going to be there. We're wired that way. But to forgive the debt of that person is to be working on Christ-likeness, to be working on godliness. And the rest, man, if you can be restored and reconciled with that person, that's amazing and that's awesome. And maybe I'll get there with a lot of people. But to exhale, to let it go as something that I have no right to hold over their head anymore is freeing, and it's amazing. So if you're working on that with somebody in your life, again, I'm just sharing because this is what I'm learning, and if it works for you, great. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. A lot of people have. And yeah, I'll leave it there. But it's what God's teaching me and what I'm learning through a lot of healing and a lot of processes that I'm going through. I just wanted to share it with you. And hopefully it's an encouragement for you that if you're working on forgiveness, work on that release, work on exhaling and letting go to God, letting that person go as something that you don't have the right to collect. It's freeing. And he's done it for us. And it's the least that we can do in his likeness to do that for other people. And again, just thoughts, just things that I'm learning. And I wanted to share them with you tonight. And look at that, I'm at like 12 minutes. So I'm 8 minutes better than I was the other night sharing my thoughts. I could probably go on all night, but that would, yeah. So thanks for listening if you did. If you're not, again, it's helping me. And so I just thought sharing would be a good thing to do if it helps anybody else. All right, see you soon.